Hi, this is Stephen Nill. I'm the guy who created Charity Channel some 25 years ago. The Charity Channel professional community is home to many of the nonprofit sector's movers and shakers. These are the visionaries who are shaping our sector in amazing ways. One of the things that I really enjoy doing is inviting them to come aboard and talk shop with me, where I get to ask questions that not only shed light on their important work, but also educate all of us in ways that help us do our jobs even better as busy nonprofit practitioners. In this segment, I'm going to have a discussion with Steve Hafner on the topic of matching gift programs. Why talk with Steve? Well, he founded HEPdata 2 decades ago with the sole mission of leveraging data to engage donors. That might sound a little dry, but his leadership enables nonprofits, whether large institutions or small, struggling nonprofits and those in the middle, to multiply fundraising results by leveraging the power of matching gifts at much lower time and expense than was ever possible not very long ago. If you are with a small or medium-sized nonprofit organization, you really should listen to this discussion, because I will be asking Steve to explain how we can do a much better job as fundraisers by being smarter about our donor data and how we harness it. If you are with a larger institution, chances are this will be familiar territory, but even so, how many times do you get an opportunity to ask the founder of a company such as HEPdata to talk about his vision for years ahead when it comes to matching gift programs? Let's get started.
Let's focus, if we can, on matching gifts. And I guess there's sort of a threshold question. Those who are listening to this discussion are going to range from people who are quite savvy with matching gifts to those who are in maybe smaller, more struggling nonprofits that aren't succeeding, or maybe don't even have a matching gift program, aren't succeeding as well as they should, or maybe don't have a matching gift program at all.
Right.
And I guess I'd like to kind of open the door to just a simple question. What is it you offer that, well, let me not go there. Let me just ask, why should a nonprofit be interested in matching gifts? Now, I know it's a really obvious question for some, including you and me.
Yeah, right.
But let's start at the fundamentals. Why matching gifts, and why are they important?
So approximately, to most nonprofits, 1 in 10 gifts can be matched. And we all like something that's free. So if for example, let's take a small nonprofit, because that's a large part of our user base. And Steve, I'm talking 1-person shops, 2-person shops, very tiny.
See, I would have assumed you were at the more of the institutional, educational institution level. That's really interesting.
Well, we work with 90% of the Philanthropy 400, but that's 360 clients or so, right?
Sure.
You've got all these prep schools, you've got all these small private schools, you've got Girl Scout chapters. I mean, you name it, we work with them. And if you're raising $100,000 in your annual fund, and if somebody could say to you, hey, would you like to grow that by 10% year in and year out? The annual fund director would say, absolutely, I would. But you can do that from the power of doubling your gift. And so the rule of thumb that we use, Steve, is 10% of gifts coming in are potentially matching gift eligible. In some cases, like at an MIT or RIT, those are going to be 17, 18, 20%, just because of the type of grads. At most nonprofits, however, that we see that in the 8 to 10%. So when we're out there consultatively talking to people, we say, what are you currently doing in matching gift revenue? It's normally about 1%, 2% maybe, or even less. And we say our goal is to get you to 5 to 10%. So if I can take $100,000 and they're currently getting 1,000 in matching gifts, and I can put them on a program that is custom tailored for them, so they can track, identify, and ultimately fulfill these matching gifts. we're talking about taking that $1,000 to $10,000. Beyond that, Steve, you also have the ability, we know from statistics, from working with a number of partners, Ruffalo, Cody, Wilson, Bennett, these are phonathon firms. I guess it's Ruffalo, McDonald-HEPdata now. We know that the principal gift for a matching gift donor is higher than a non-match eligible donor. We know that the retention rate for a match eligible donor is higher than a non-match eligible donor. And we know the acquisition rate for a non-donor who's match eligible, Steve, to a non-match eligible non-donor is much higher. And we always want to improve our acquisition rate. So, you know, there's something there for everybody, but that's ultimately why I think people want matching gifts.
Out of curiosity, if you have the number in your head, what is the average matching gift size-wise?
So VSE, Voluntary Support of Education, does a survey every year. Mm-hmm. And the survey 600 plus universities. That figure, I have it with me. I knew you were probably going to ask me. $949 is the average matching gift size. Mm-hmm. That's in the university space. I'm sure it's different in the nonprofit space. But what's exciting is the minimum gift for most companies is $25 to match. So you don't have to be a big spender. You don't have to be a big donor. And the maximum oftentimes goes up to $10,000.
Of course, it's only a part of the picture looking at the average gift, because a matching gift program is just that. It's a program, is it not? I mean, you have a process that kind of creates a campaign around the whole idea of the match. Mm-hmm. And that's where the magic occurs. Is it not? I mean, if you had, 10 or 100 gifts at $1,000 each, that's pretty good. But a single gift of $1,000 may or may not be exciting, depending on who it is. So if you roll these into a good campaign, then you can really take off.
Well, exactly. And the idea of soliciting a match eligible donor differently than you do a non-match eligible donor, Steve, is exactly what we do. So we'll partner with a lot of firms out there who do solicitations, be it Ruffalo, McDonald-HEPdata, be it some of the printing firms who are doing, digital or traditional print media. And what they'll do is they'll come to us and say, hey, before we make that solicitation, and the schools can do this or the nonprofits can do this as well. World Vision is an example of that. What they'll do is they will send us their data. And what we want to try to do is identify how many records in their database are matching gift eligible. To do that, you have to know where they're working. For a nonprofit, that's usually pretty difficult. Less than 5% of their constituents do they know where donors are working. So what we do is whatever information they have on their system, we'll mine it, identify who's match eligible. For those that don't have an employer name, what we do is we do an employer pending service. It's called Employer Find. We came out with it about 8 years ago. We've kind of pioneered that whole concept within the nonprofit space. I mean, 8 years ago, Steve, nobody was taking 100,000 records and appending employer data to it. And we acquired a company about 5 years ago out of Birmingham, Alabama called InDegree. Their claim to fame was the ability to match up donor data to social media. And of course, these were all public profiles. We were a channel partner of theirs, and within about 120 days, we had sold more in that period of time than they had in 2 years, just because of the HEP network. We've got about 7,000 annual users. And what we saw was just, they quickly came to us and asked us to acquire them, and we did. It was that was ultimately completed a few years ago. But what it did, in effect, was take our ability to go out and take a World Vision or a St. Jude's data, or a local conservation easement type organization, and we can append employment data to about 40% of their file. So when you talk about the campaign and kind of trying to customize something for matching gifts, what we're looking at doing is mining existing data and then looking for pockets of opportunity where they might not know there are opportunity or spot opportunity. So with a World Vision, For example, they were first, one of our early adopters of the whole employer find technology, and they absolutely loved it. Their annual giving and donor engagement folks, Steve, were crazy about it. They're getting ready to send us 3 million records, and we were jumping for joy back here in Virginia. The CFO said, "Not so fast, guys. Time out. We need to prove this." So what they did is they sent us 100,000 records. We screened it. And this was, Steve, prior to our acquisition of Indegree, so our appending rate was not as high. It was about 30%. But we found about 28,000 records with employer name, job title, social media, URL. What we then do is we micro mine that data to identify which ones are match eligible. In this case, about 2,200 were, give or take 8%. They already had a strategy set up to a third of them they were going to call. Now, keep in mind, they knew where these people now worked. They knew what their matching gift URL was. They knew what the login was. A third of them, they were going to send an email, and a third, they were going to go ahead and do print media, traditional. Within 120 days, they had about $78,000 in matching gift revenue in, and they couldn't believe it. The test did not cost them a lot of money. And subsequently, we've run 500,000 bucket records over time, but they quickly proved to the CFO that, hey, for every $100,000 you send, here's what we're going to expect in match revenue. So that may seem, that's a lot. World Vision is a top tier nonprofit. We've done the same for St. Jude's, but it's all relative, because if you have 5,000 donors, Steve, or you've got 10,000 donors, the impact is just as great.
You said a lot so far. I mean, for one thing, you've explained how important it is to understand in your donor base where the donors are employed, so that you can then understand what kind of match they might be eligible for. Am I right?
Correct. Right.
And then you've identified a big problem, which is, okay, we've got a donor base. It might be enormous. You mentioned a couple of examples, and as well as St. Jude's, which I assume has an enormous donor base as well.
They do, yeah. Or
you might have a much more modest donor base and still be in the dark about who's eligible for a match. And so unless there's a service out there which you created that is able to bring them the employer information, it's not very much good to them, because all they're left with is saying, hey, by the way, as maybe part of their annual campaign, if your employer makes a match, you should do that. That's not a very powerful appeal. Whereas if you go, so I'm assuming that once this database information is processed, and now we've got employer data matched against the donor base, that the nonprofit does something unique with that. In other words, it must message that back to those donors, potential donors, that, did you know you're eligible for that kind of, is that what's done? Is it's kind of rolled up into the annual campaign, or what are you typically seeing out there?
That's basically what happens is what you mentioned. If you don't know they're match eligible, you're left up to the donor, right?
Right. And they don't know, do they, necessarily?
In many cases, they don't. For example, 40% of the companies in our database, 40% of the subsidiaries, Steve, that are matching gift eligible don't have the same name as their parent company. So, for example, Johnson & Johnson has a lot of subsidiaries. Many of them don't say Johnson & Johnson. Unless you read your employee handbook from cover to cover, you probably don't know you're matching gift eligible. You've got that. You've also got apathy. The donor thinks it's complicated and so forth. So we want to take that out of the equation. But in the scenario where we're going in and telling them they're match eligible, you're then proactive. I can then say, Steve, thanks for the $1,000 pledge last year. Our records indicate, IBM will match that gift 1-to-1. Here's the employee login to get your gift matched.
That's powerful.
Exactly. That's what we're doing.
So you're tracking, what you're doing on your side of it is pretty amazing. It seems like it would be well beyond the scope of what all but the largest nonprofits could conceivably do. I mean, you're doing things like tracking how many companies offer a match, but not just the companies, their subsidiaries. Maybe they have corporate foundations that make the match, or they have an office, or, I mean, it can be really granular, right? So you're tracking all that stuff.
We are. Yeah, it's a full-time job for about 3 people.
Yeah, I bet.
And we're tracking approximately 23,000 companies total. 2,500 of those are parent companies, about 19,000 plus are subsidiaries. We track worldwide. We have a UK database, Steve. We've got a Canadian database. We've got a Pan-Asian database. So we have a lot of schools in Singapore, for example. We've got schools in Australia and New Zealand, and nonprofits, by the way, not just schools. I would say the breakdown, for example, just to give you an idea, it's not all education based. I would say 70% of our clients are .orgs.
Okay. I want to talk more about the smaller nonprofit. I'm going to guess, correct me if I'm wrong, that the larger nonprofits are fairly buttoned down in terms of taking full advantage of the sort of amplification of the process that's involved in matching gifts. It's for every dollar you get another dollar, or maybe $2, whatever the match is. That's powerful.
Right.
And because larger institutions have the resources for that, and economies of scale as well start to kick in. And in my own background, I've been at both sides. I've been at the top end, high end, large institutions, but also down at the grassroots organizations, and including a school that I helped found years ago. So my heart has always been with the smaller to medium-sized nonprofit that's struggling for assets. They don't really have the resources to do a matching gift program effectively unless they can tap into the kinds of resources that you're offering. Talk a little bit more about small nonprofits and what you're seeing out there. Would you say that that's the biggest area of the market that's not really achieving its potential in terms of maximizing gifts through optimizing matches?
Yeah, Steve, it's a good question, and I'd say that's accurate. That a lot of them just don't know the potential impact that they can have, and so we either find them through going to an AFP show, or they find us on the internet. Oftentimes, many times, what they'll do is they'll go to a peer site, NY Conservancy in New York. They'll see a peer organization in DC and see that, for example, they have a plugin on the website that's from HEPdata, and they see the logo and they say matching gift data provided by HEP. They'll click it on and they'll say, hey, I want that. That just makes sense. We're not doing anything now. And that's the most common thing I hear, is that you've got a small nonprofit, a few matching gifts come in, and it's all based on employee donors who know about it and do take the time to go ahead and complete the match process. But what if they could be a little bit more proactive, just a little bit more proactive? And consultatively, what we'll do is we'll go in and say, well, what are you doing to promote matching gifts? And the answer is not much. I mean, I hear that openly, Steve. I hear that once a week from a nonprofit. We're not doing much. And when we sit down at a small nonprofit, people think, well, maybe do I have to spend a lot of money to do this? The answer is no. We have a matching gift plugin that you can just place on your website. It's very inexpensive. It's under $500 for a 12-month license. And you say, okay, well, that covers my website. At least my online donors and friends can now check the database of 23,000 companies and see if they're match eligible. That's a good start, right? But you want to go beyond that. And so once you have that link up there, just think about it for a second. Every gift every solicitation, any type of engagement communication, you want to promote the link, just saying, for example, an acknowledgement letter. Thanks for the $100 gift, Steve. We really appreciate it. Be sure to check, Central Park Conservancy.org/matching gifts. You can now use that as a follow-up, right? And promote it through that means. If you have a phone-a-thon, like a lot of the public radio places have, you can use that in that manner as well. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, is Let's get a plugin up on your website. The next question is, well, how many donors do you have? What is our universe? If it's 5,000 instead of 5 million, great. We know that about 500 of those people are going to be matching gift eligible. You can tell me who those are? Absolutely, we can tell you who those are. So we want to start using some of the tools. The link that I mentioned, Steve, that's what we call a retail product. It's a great service, and that's kind of matching gifts 101. Our goal is to make that available to every single nonprofit that wants it. We're up to about 7,000 annually. We have a lot of work to do. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, because that's simply just a plug-in on the website. The next question is, okay, what's matching gifts 300? What's matching gifts 400? How do I have a more advanced strategy? And that's where we get into some of the, let's mine your data, let's do some employer pending and so forth.
Let's explore some of that in just a moment. I don't want to move off this point too quickly.
Sure.
So for what I agree with you is a low price point, a smaller or very small even nonprofit could put a plug-in on their website that allows their supporters to find out whether their employer makes a match for the organization. Is that, do I have that about right, or?
Correct, right.
I understand that.
Yes.
So right there is a way to sort of amplify the online donations an organization is receiving. Does that have an impact for other kinds of fundraising campaigns that organization may be conducting that are not quote unquote online, maybe the annual fund or anything like that? Or do they need to go to other services to support those kinds of efforts?
Well, if you are, it's a great question, because if you're on a budget and you're a 1 or 2 person shop, maybe you don't have 2,000 to spend, but you have 500 to spend. And that's the budget you've been given. So that's the budget they work with. So while the eMatch donor link, which is the plugin, Steve, while that's great for your website, it can be used by your gift accounting person. So let's say there's some type of gala and they get 100 people who attended, 200 people, and 50 of those people told us where they work. Well, the gift accounting person can proactively go ahead and look up those 50 employer names to see that, guess what, 7 of them are match eligible.
That's what I was getting at. In other words, that's a tool not just for the public, but for somebody on the team to
exactly
go to that very same website page and plug in names and get the information, and then roll that into maybe a direct solicitation.
Exactly. And then way back in the day, Steve, people would do a lot of matching gift brochures. And so you could list the parent companies. We still sell quite a few of them because people like to put the hard copy in with an acknowledgement letter, for example.
Sure.
And those would be 11 by 17 folded into 4 sides, 8.5 by 11. And it would list all the parent companies, and you might have something creative. Defenders of Wildlife in DC comes to mind. They had 2 zebras on the front drinking water saying your gift could go twice as far. It's really, they still do it. And it's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But the matching gift link, if you're on a budget, that can replace that. So now all of a sudden, my acknowledgement card, I promote Defenders of Wildlife / matching gifts. I promote that URL. I say, hey, take the time. You've given us a gift. Take the time to see if the gift can be impacted double.
A couple thoughts are going through my mind. One of them is it's not really a question, but years and years ago, I read Alvin Toffler's book, Future Shock. And I always took that to mean that data is power and data is money in a commercial setting. I'm beginning to see that in the area of philanthropy, data is all of those things and more. It's very interesting. I just had an aha moment.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, how interesting. And
you're
doing it for all the good guys out there, who are saving the planet, saving the world, saving humankind.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Now I stopped you because I wanted to make sure we slowed down a little bit on this lower rung entry level service that I could see could pay for itself in one gift. So, I mean, it seems like kind of a no brainer to me. couple of questions. One is, I'm going to guess that you have put in quite an effort to help educate nonprofit professionals on matching gifts and what they can be doing, not just necessarily with your services, but they could be doing in general for matching gifts. If so, I'd love to learn more about those resources. Well, let me just stop there. Let me ask you that.
Sure.
If somebody listening to this broadcast isn't already a guru on matching gifts, and that's hopefully going to be most people listening, although we have gurus listening too.
Right.
How can they learn about how to put together a program for any size program, but particularly small to middle-sized nonprofits?
Right. So on our website, we've got an education center that has all of our blogs. You've spoken to Joan Graham in the past, and we have some wonderful blogs. Many of them are on the topic of how small shops can grow matching gifts, for example. We've got 22 steps to matching gifts success, kind of a must-have for nonprofits, Steve. We've got webinars. We started doing webinars, I think, in the spring of 2009, and we typically get anywhere from 150 people on the low end to as many as 1,000. And they're great. They're typically not done by us. They're typically done by customers or partners, and they're very educational. So if you go to our website and just look under news, you'll see the blog tab, you'll see the webinar. Steve, openly, I think we have 70 plus webinars in there. Everything from a Bishop Fian, you talk about a small shop, Bishop Fian, small Catholic school in Boston. They were doing under 10K a year in matching gifts. Their first year with us, they went over 100K just by simply putting a strategy together, which included some of the tools we've talked about. But we always tell people, just put a strategy together, just get proactive, make somebody at your nonprofit responsible for matching gifts. You're going to see an improvement just with or without HEPdata.
Sure. That's pretty powerful. Now, getting back to where we left off when I kind of put a halt there, what other, let's go up the ladder a little bit. We talked about sort of the entry level service, and this interview is not really about all your services so much, but the fact is you've got some great services that I think people want to know about, and I like to learn about them myself. So
sure.
What else? Take us up the ladder a little bit of sophistication of services that we could be pursuing.
Sure. So when we look at a nonprofit's database, we want to see what do they have on their system already that isn't being put to good use. So let's keep it simple. Let's say 20,000 records on the file, and about 5,000, Steve, have an employer name. What we want to do is mine those through a service called AutoMatch. So we can take their data, have them send it securely, and they might have, for example, 30 people working for IBM, 30 donors. Only a few of those records are coded as match eligible. And that's possible because nobody keys in IBM the same way. You might get INT''LB US Machines. You might get IBM. You might get International Business Machines, Inc., so on and so forth. And with these relational databases, Steve, if you don't link them right, they're not flagged as match eligible. So our software and our algorithm picks up all those abbreviations, and it's smartware, so it grows over time. So we're able to pick up aliases, DBAs, all those abbreviations and so forth. So that's the first thing. You've already got this information on your system, but it's not being put to good use. Here's a true statistic. I can say this since the mid-90s because we've had this service out. We know if a nonprofit or a university sends us data to screen, these are existing employer names, we know 4 to 12% is going to get flagged as match eligible. We stipulate when a client sends us data, only send employer names that you don't know are match eligible, because we don't need to tell you something you already know. So that 4 to 12% figure holds. I mean, we've done over 1,000 screenings. That's a lot of people in your database, 4 to 12% that aren't being targeted as matching gifts. And so why spend a lot of money if you've already got something on your system? So that's the first thing we do. Second thing we do is look at the 15,000 records, sticking with the 20K example, And let's go ahead and maybe do a sample. Send us 1,000 records, send us 500 records. Let's see how many employer names we can find. Typically, it's going to be about 40%. And of the 40%, we know 10% will be match eligible. So if you sent, let's keep the math easy. You sent me 10,000 records and we come back with 4,000 employer names. Not all 4,000 will be matching gift eligible. We know about 10% will. So about 400 will come back as match eligible. If your average gift is $100, Steve, help me with the math there. That's 40 grand.
You're asking me to help you with the math, huh? We're in trouble.
I was an economics major, but I got a BA, not a BS.
You have a number, you just have quite a number of different services. So keep going. I think this is interesting. Sure. What else?
So, okay, so we talked about the plugin on the website. The next upgrade is, it's called eMatch Portal. And what that does, so when I donate to a charity and I go into the eMatch, I'm anonymous. The nonprofit simply is giving me a plugin, an ability to look up and see if my gift is matching gift eligible. Okay, that helps me, but the nonprofit doesn't really know I did the search. So there's no way to tie me to the search. And at the end of the month, I can look at metrics on HEPdata's analytics page, and I can see that I had 300 donors who did a search, or I had 20 donors who did a search, and they clicked through to the final output page, meaning 10% approximately are match eligible. Other than an IP address, I don't know who they are. With the portal, when I do a search, it says, Steve, click here to get your gift matched. And it's all the colors and look and feel of the nonprofit. They click, they enter the portal. All of a sudden, we know it's Steve Hafner. He gave $200. He works for HEPdata. HEPdata matches 4-to-1. We do, by the way. Got to practice what you preach, right?
That's a pretty healthy match.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden, the donor gets an email with the login to their employer to go ahead and register their match right there. Simultaneously, the gift accounting person at the nonprofit, whoever's been designated, gets an email saying, Steve Hafner just gave $200 on your website. He works for HEPdata. We're collecting their email, some basic data. That's all information, Steve, you wouldn't have had before. So now I'm all of a sudden starting to build a biographical background on who Steve is. Previously, he was an anonymous donor. We knew his name. We knew he cared about the environment, or he cared about a local park, whatever the cause is. That's it. But other than that, I'm anonymous. So all of a sudden, I know his employer. I potentially know his job title. So you want to talk about engagement? All of a sudden, we're looking at potentially leadership giving, major giving, and opportunities there. But sticking with matching gifts, the portal then helps the donor get the gift matched. It allows the nonprofit right from the portal to certify the match. So we've knocked out the steps, right? Those are the two key steps. Those are the two barriers to entry, the friction, if you will. And all in a dashboard. Every morning I come into my dashboard and I see who's given, who's registered their gift, who's completed their paperwork, who hasn't completed their paperwork. And what I do is we have an auto drip campaign that once a week, and the nonprofit has the ability, Steve, to set how often they want this email to go out. Some only want it to go out once a month or once every couple of weeks. But it says a reminder, it says, Steve, thanks for the gift. Our records indicate you work for IBM. Here's your login. Have you completed your match? Yes, I have. No, I haven't, but I will. That all gets relayed back to the portal. And if I'm an enterprising gift accounting person, I go into my portal every morning. I say, who's new? Who's got a pending match? Who do I have to certify a match for? So I go ahead and I quickly certify those matches. And then we might have an opportunity where we've got a $1,000 donor. This just recently happened at Juvenile Diabetes. They had a $1,000 donor within 6 hours of going live with us, who had completed their paperwork. So they were absolutely ecstatic. They're now up to about $70,000. They've been live for about 6 weeks. But it really is an ability to go ahead and spot opportunities. It's the next level in matching gifts. This has been needed for quite some time. And we're ecstatic. We've had it out for about close to two months now. We're up to 30 installs. We've got another 30 pending. And it openly has been our most successful launch of any product since the eMatch back in 2000.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Your entrepreneurial spirit is really strong, and you've been at this quite a while now. So I imagine if we talk again in a year or two, you'll have some new things to tell us about too.
There's no question. You got to stay constantly evolving, right?
I agree. I hadn't been thinking about it from this direction. I'm just curious. You're obviously you're facing nonprofit organizations and partnering with them to solve these problems that they have to create and run matching gift programs. Do you offer services? Do you face any of the companies? In other words, companies themselves have a set of issues and challenges in maintaining matching gift programs. And I'm just curious if your company offers any services in that direction.
So there are some companies out there, Steve. Benevity comes to mind. Your Cause comes to mind. There's a number of them. I think there's about 5 now, and they will go in and they'll manage your matching gift program at the corporate level. We don't do that. What we do is partner with those firms to kind of make the match easier. And so, for example, with Benevity, we see a great opportunity to have their system talk to our system, to the portal, for example. So they distribute
That's going to help your data accuracy quite a bit, is it not?
It's going to help
your data.
Yeah, and 2 points on your question. So they really want us to list information correctly. You're absolutely right. It's in their best interest, and it's in our interest. And they all know us because we've been around a long time. And once we explain why it's in everybody's best interest, they're usually very cooperative. But also on the back end, Benevity distributes gifts in many cases at the end of the year, Steve. And if I'm a nonprofit and I get a list of, if I get a check for $20,000 and I get my roster of, let's say 200 donors that represents, okay? At the end of 12 months, I need to go back to my CRM and reconcile all that data. So I've got to parse out each donor and give the proper credit, soft credit, or the soft credit in this case, to the donor. If I can get HEPdata system to talk to, in this case, the portal, if I can get it to talk to Benevity, we can solve that riddle. And that's just one less administrative hurdle for the nonprofit, which guess what? It means they've got more resources to focus on fundraising and their mission.
Let me ask you we're running a little bit short on time, but you're quite the visionary. What do you envision in the next few years? What new changes or maybe services are you thinking about? If you feel like you could reveal them at this stage, I'm just curious. What do you see down the road?
So specifically with matching gifts, what we want to do is to be able to talk to the big CRMs that are out there, the Salesforces, the Blackbauds, and some of the others, some of the larger online platforms. And just kind of a caveat, we partner with about 70 companies out there who integrate our matching gift API. The portal's a whole nother animal. It's a SaaS-based product. And if we can get them talking together, just to give you some perspective, you look at a Texas A&M that gets over $1 million a year in matching gifts from ExxonMobil alone. If they can take their offline donors in a bulk or a batch format and load them into the portal, they can more effectively track matching gifts. Right now, that is more of a manual process, or you've got to do some programmatic changes to make it happen. But if I can get their software, if I can get the Blackbaud software, NXT, Razor's Edge, or Salesforce, if I can get them talking together, it'll make that a lot easier. So I can tell you that's what I'll be working on with our tech guys and the tech folks at those firms, is getting systems to talk, because it'll just streamline the process. And the World Vision, or excuse me, the Benevity example, Steve, is probably a good example of that.
It's in the best interest of the companies and also of the customers you're serving to be able to link up and share this kind of information in an intelligent way.
It is, and we don't see each other as competitors. We truly see each other as partners. And I couldn't always say that 5, 10, 8, 10 years ago that, we were doing something a little bit different, but now we look at it as just a piece of the puzzle and we can all collaborate. Now we're seeing a much more openness to that whole idea of collaboration. So that's kind of what I want to do specifically with matching gifts, Steve, is continue to refine the ability to append employer data and maybe take that 40% number up to 60% number. And I can just tell you, when you're talking about tens of millions of employer names, we're talking tens of millions of dollars. American Cancer has been a client of ours for a long time, and they've steadily grown their matching gifts. When we started with them, they were about 5 million. I believe they were 13.5 last year. That's a lot of money raised for cancer research. When you look at American Red Cross, there's a disaster. Our servers go from 100,000 searches a day, for example, from a Red Cross, or 100,000 a month to potentially 1 million searches a day. So that's why this is really important. It really is important.
Well, this has been a really interesting look, and I could tell that it's a big topic, and even in the time that we've allowed here for discussion, we've scratched the surface barely.
We really have, yeah. Steve, I could go on for hours.
Well, okay, let's do it. No, I'm kidding.
Well, if you invite me back, I will come back one day for sure.
Yeah, let's do it. I'd love to explore some additional topics with you. You have so much to teach us, and I learn a lot. In fact, I'm still kind of unpacking it all in my mind, and I find it really interesting. And the future is here. I mean, this is powerful stuff, and it sounds like you're, the so-called, the quote-unquote industry is really kind of maturing too.
Yes.
And that's an interesting and beneficial thing as well. Fascinating. All right. Well, until we have you back, thanks so much, Steve, for your time in talking to us. It's really been great.
Steve, my pleasure. Good talking to you.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Yep.
I hope you enjoyed my discussion with HEPdata founder Steve Hafner. For 25 years, Charity Channel has been in the forefront of the nonprofit practitioner community. Our professional community numbers well over 100,000 nonprofit sector practitioners. Charity Channel operates leading email-based discussion lists for nonprofit practitioners, publishes books and articles written by and for members of the Charity Channel professional community, and conducts training and online summits such as Charity Channel's Masters of Fundraising Summit. If you would like to join our mailing list, go to charitychannel.com and click on the Sign Me Up button to get on our mailing list. If you would like to propose an article or even a book, you can do that on our website as well. And once you do, an editor will be back to you to talk about your article or your book promptly. Please let us know how we can improve our interviews, and if you have somebody who you think we would enjoy interviewing, please let us know.